G'day everyone, back for our usual Friday, well it's Friday for me, live show. Going back onto the Stella today, so I'm going to have Stella with you guys. So about to crack this stubby. Got this thing from New Zealand to open it up. I love New Zealand. I got that when I was last there. So just saying hi in the chat, guys. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes for people to pop in, so cheers anyway. Just had breakfast not long ago. Oh, I love it. Let me come up to here. So I'm going to bring up the chat just to see who's with us. So we got video, so say hi if you are on board, guys. We've got Video Masters here, Ken's here early. Peter's here as well. Video Master's saying, wow, that was a nice shot. Yeah, that was from Kiara from yesterday. I'm going to show you, take you through that shoot just as a sneak peek. We'll do that in a few minutes, actually, guys. This is just going to be a pre-show, so you can skip to the Osler Images sign if you want to, or if you're watching later, there'll be a timeline underneath. Joe's here, making my first live show instead of catching the rerun. That's great to see you on here live, Joe. Oreo's here. Dana, she's finally got her a7iii, arrived yesterday, setting up while I wait for the live stream. That's fantastic, Dana, you're going to love it. And I used that in the studio yesterday. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. I wanted to try it in the studio. What else have we got? Richard's just in saying hi. Jeffrey's also here saying g'day. Happy Friday. Yes, it certainly is. Ben's here. G'day, mate. How are you? David Johnson's here. Joe said, just followed her and gave her 2,000. That's fantastic, Joe. She contacted me this morning and said how excited she was that she was just near 2,000. So I'm so happy. She'll be jumping up and down now. She's been dying to get that. She got 20 odd from yesterday's live chat, so she was really pleased about that. So thanks for following her, guys. Vic is also here. Jen, I finally managed to join one of your live shows. Great to see you on here, Jen. Kevin's here. Dana, I was saying thanks to Oreo. David, hi from the Lake of Ozarks in Missouri. And Shaku's here as well. Tell Kiara to brace for stardom. Yes, I will. I know she's doing so well. Wait till you see the sneak peek into the shoots that I've just done. It's pretty good. Now, today I'm going to give it another minute. Guys, if you can, please give me a big thumbs up because it does get people over. I'd really appreciate you giving me a big thumbs up. That means a lot to me. JD from Toronto's also popped in. Rui's also popped in from Alabama. David Morrison said, have my a7iii and the 28f2. Waiting on back ordered the 24105. Yeah, that's been really hard to get. It's actually even on back order down here too. It's a tough lens to get, that 24105. Perhaps Sony just didn't or underestimated the amount of popularity of that lens. It is a really good travel lens though, that 24105. It's got that great focal length. It is f4, but like I said, you'll see a lot of the shots that I use are on f4 anyway. The 70-200 I've got's f4. And I love it. The 16-35 is f4. And now with the high ISO these cameras can pump out, f4 is really not an issue anymore. So I think that's a great lens. That might be one that I get one day. Michael said, been toying with getting either the a7iii or the a7R3. It's so annoying as I change my mind every 5 minutes. First world problems. I'm going to talk about that again from a couple of posts that were put in, Michael, during this discussion today. So we'll go through that. James said, first time joining from Winnebago, Illinois. So thanks for joining us, James. Hopefully you really enjoy it. These are always long shows. They're usually always around an hour long, so be prepared for the wait. Also, just crack a stubby with us. That's the famous saying that, as Aussies say, crack a stubby. Dennis said, hey, David, I get to see 2 live shows in a row. Woohoo! Good to see you on here. So I think we're just about to start in a second, guys. So let me just pull this up and I'm going to actually take you through the show because I think we've got lots to talk about today. I'm just going to put down the timeline on here. So 450. 50, and I'm just going to go to the thing and we'll start the show. G'day everyone, thanks for joining in for the live show again today. We've just had a bit of a pre-show. I am leaving the timeline down below, so if you are watching this later on, you can skip to the segment that interests you, because these shows, like usual, are always going to go for probably an hour or a bit longer. They're just a discussion between friends, basically, and we talk about different things. If you are in the live chat, like I'll bring that up now, you'll notice that if you put the hash David Osler or at David Osler, it does highlight me. That way, when we come back to questions later on, I'll know basically, and I won't miss it if you do that. Sometimes I can miss them because we get so many questions put in there. So if you do want to ask a question, please put that at David Osler. If you're watching later on, obviously just leave the question down below, and I always answer the questions personally anyway. That's one of my pet hates about other YouTubers that say leave questions below and then they never answer them. I think it's a bit rude. I'm here for you guys. If you ask a question, I endeavour to answer it. So yeah, so if you're not here on the live show, which is obviously always better, yeah, leave those questions down below. We've got stacks to talk about today. There's a lot of rumours and things like that we're going to go through. I'm also going to take you through Kiara's shoot. If you watched yesterday's live video, I introduced Kiara to you guys live. We did a studio shoot. I haven't done one of those for a while because I've been so busy with weddings and portrait shoots outside that I wanted to try a high-key studio shoot session, and we did that yesterday. And I'm going to take you through a sneak peek of that just so you'll see it. Now, I did film it, so in the coming days you'll be able to see this shoot being done, and you'll actually see how I produce it and everything I do in that. So that will be sort of offered in the coming days. And I've still got quite a lot from when I photographed Kiara in the old building as well. I've also got a shoot that I'm doing over the weekend with Smoke. I'm going to be filming that with a couple of models there that I'll film and post in the coming days as well. So I've got stacks coming up, that's for sure. I've got another wedding next weekend, I think. Wedding season for me is starting to peter off now due to we're heading in towards winter. Even though our winters aren't that cold, we still shut off basically for weddings in winter. We only get a few. So at least that side of it's easing off, and that way I can catch up with the things that I need to do, etc. Now, there's stacks watching, guys, so if you can, please give me a big thumbs up. There's nearly 60 watching now, so I'd love you to give me a thumbs up. It does help support the channel. Now, basically what I'm going to do is we're going to start going through, I think we'll look at Kiara's shoot. So it is... Dennis just said, I love that you actually answer and talk to people. The only other one that does is Dustin Amber. Oh, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, I honestly, I came from a teaching background. I lectured at a university, photography, for 20-odd years. So it's important to me, and that does mean a lot to me. And I definitely always try and answer the questions personally. I hate when you ask a question, and I've done it too myself where I wanted to know an answer, and they don't answer back. Now, a lot of YouTubers say, leave your comments down below, your questions down below, and then they never answer them. I mean, seriously, and I hope some of them watch this, but if you are going to say leave a comment down below, have the decency to answer that for your followers that are actually following you. And I always answer it. If you check all of the feeds that you look at, I always answer the people that ask questions. So it takes time, but why ask people to leave a question if you're not going to answer it? So, yeah, I think it's rude. And that's great. So what else have we got? Just so we can, before we actually start the things. JD said, conspicuously colour is most skipped topic when discussing photography. For me, colour is the most important thing. Kudos for bringing it up. Yeah, we're going to discuss that. I've also given a colour theory lecture, if you want to watch that, in one of my previous videos, JD. I actually lectured in colour theory. Let me just drop this exposure a little bit. I actually lectured in colour theory in university here, so I know colour really well. Jose said, has anyone paid taxes on online ordering of the a7iii through Amazon? Not sure what that means because we don't have to pay that here. Shiku said, your subscription is growing. Soon it may be impossible to answer. Well, I'm hoping that I can. I mean, look, the thing is, if that got to the case, I wouldn't be asking people to leave questions because it's just ethically wrong. If you ask someone to leave a question, you should have the decency to answer it. Lance said, hey, hi, Lance. Front said, photography and drone, gave me $5 and I'll give you a thumbs up. Feathermaker said, I'm at work, just popped in to give a thumbs up to you, David. Thank you, mate. David Mossman said, since this was since there was a bad run of the 24-105, I wondered if there was a production problem. I didn't even know about that, David, so that's interesting. Anyway, we're going to start with the shoot. So let me put down Kiara's shoot, which is 10 minutes. All right, so basically I'm going to take you through Kiara's shoots. Let me bring this over. And let me just make this a bit bigger so that I can take you through it. I'll make it a fraction smaller. All right, so I'm just going to, like I said, this will be really basic because I've actually done this for you guys in detail, but I just wanted to show you that I used the a7 III for the first time in studio, so I wanted to talk to you about this. It was fantastic, actually. The focus was superb, like I expected it to be. And I used the 55. The more I use that lens, the more I'm falling in love with it again. I didn't use it for a long time, but now that I've been using it for the video aspect, particularly an awful lot, because I've been finding the Sony 55 is probably the best lens that I've ever used for video. As particularly if you're shooting on a gimbal, the focusing is so quick, it locks on, it just follows your subject like crazy, and the depth of field that you can get shooting at 1.8 with the Sony cameras is just superb. So I really am loving it. And I decided yesterday to do the studio shoot with Kiara with the 50. Now, luckily, Kiara too is very slim and very beautiful, so 50mm for Kiara is probably quite acceptable because remember the less focal range that the camera, usually the perfect length for portraiture is 85 to 135, but Kiara, her face is lovely with the compression even at 55. I mean, I can photograph Kiara at 35 and she still looks beautiful. But so I decided yesterday to do this at using the 55mm and the a7 III, just to give it a go and to test how it went. The eye autofocus was insane on this camera yesterday. Even when I was right back at the end of the studio shooting in, it was just stunning. It locked eye autofocus every single time. I'll just wait for this thing to lock up. It's super sharp, that lens. It really is super sharp, and I'll keep blowing these up. These are straight out of camera, guys, so you can have a look. But basically, you can see the lighting here that I've done on this one particularly. This had a certain type of lighting that you'll see when we do the video. I'll explain all about this so you can actually see how this has been lit. I used multiple different lighting patterns yesterday in the shoot that I actually did, so you'll start to see how it was actually done. But I really did love using that 55, and like I said, it was grabbing focus every single time. It never missed a beat, to be honest. When people say the eye autofocus doesn't work, clearly they must have a problem, because I've found that the eye autofocus is spot on every single time. Well, like I said, I moved right to the back of the studio and it was tracking her every time. And, you know, the eye autofocus was never missing. It was grabbing that eye every time, even when she was turning away, coming back to the camera. And the beauty is now the algorithms, the way the camera works, if she spins around and goes the opposite way, it locks focus on that last point, so it doesn't lose it like it used to. I just noticed Oreo said beauty dish as a shadow filler on the bottom. Yes, yeah, it was. And I'll mention that. No, the actual, yes, it was for this one. Yes, it was Oreo. I did use the beauty dish, yeah. And you can see it. Some people love that look in the eye. Others don't like it, but it is a very high fashion look because it's very contrasty. You get the double light that you can see here, and that's one way of saying how it's actually been done. I did a couple, and I'll show you. Basically, I did one image where I didn't use the beauty dish underneath, and you'll see the difference of what that shadow looks like underneath the chin. And then I added the beauty dish in to show you the difference. So I did film all of this explaining how to do it, so you will see the complete breakdown of how the shoot was done. So that's going to be coming up shortly. But like I said, the camera really just did excel. It was quite a high-end lighting setup, but you could do this with Godox, and I explained that on the day. It's just that you would need a minimum of 3 lights to do this. I ended up using 4, and I'll talk to you about that why in the video if you want to look at it. But I just wanted to give you a sneak peek of how the whole thing worked. You know, like I said, every single time that eye autofocus is locked on, and it's just really just makes your life so much easier that you don't have to worry about that locking focus and recomposing. You know, I had a lot of people saying to me that the autofocus was faulty. I think they were trolls, actually, a lot of them, because I kept saying, look, I've never had an issue with it, and I haven't had an issue with it. It's been fantastic for me every single time. But, you know, like I said, wait till you see this shoot. It will be coming up. I just wanted to give you a sneak peek of how the autofocus has worked every single time, and it has. It's got the focus every single time. These are all straight out of camera, guys, so there's no editing done to these at all. So you're seeing this exactly as I've captured it out of camera, and you can see basically, you know, how sharp each actual image is. And once I've sharpened them later on and done some editing, I will still take some of these into Photoshop to edit them for my high-end look that I always do. But they're going to be beautiful once they've come out. These are just ones that, like I said, I've grabbed just to show you guys this morning as a quick overview. Anyway, so that's that. So let's get to the next thing, which is 1555. 1560, I'll make it. Because we're now going to start to go through some news. And keep asking questions too, guys, if you want to, because I am going to come back and ask some questions later on, answer some questions. So the first news today in the news and rumours. So basically, this was an SR4 that I noticed the other day when I was checking through Sony Alpha rumours. They're saying that now they expect new products to be announced mid to late May. And I'll talk about this in a minute. There's another thing about this that is interesting. But according to this article, they're actually saying that there's a 24 1mm 1.4G, which is a Sony, obviously. And there's also the a7S III and the a6-700 will also be announced this year. And maybe, they're saying maybe also a 135 FE is coming as well, sometime soon as well. Now, that's really interesting. So, the 135 particularly interests me. Cheers, everyone. The 135 does. I'm still not sure yet whether to go for something like the Samyang and give that a go and see how it works. To be totally honest, the 135 is not a lens that I'm going to be dragging out all the time, because I've discussed this with you before, that I don't like to carry around lots of weight. So the 135 for me probably would be a lens that I wouldn't take out all the time, but it would be a lens that I may take and grab out occasionally for some of my model portrait shoots and things like that. I'd love to be able to shoot 135 at 1.8. That would just be stunning. And so therefore I might wait and see just what the Sigma's like when that's released. The other lens too that I'm even thinking about is the 105 Sigma as well. Really interests me as well, because that's a 1.4, I think that lens was. And I think the bokeh on that would be just outstanding. So I may even look at that as well, because if I'm only going to grab these lenses out occasionally just for a certain look, they might be two lenses that I'm really interested in. Obviously the 135, if they bring out a 135, now whether that's going to be like the Sony 1.8 version and they bring out a cheaper version of that, which is 1.8, or whether that's a G Master one, we're going to have to wait and see. If it's a G Master lens, then obviously it is going to be really, really expensive. And then it may be that I just would like to try the Sigma. Now, I've used the Sigma before when I had Nikon, and it was outstanding. I also used the 85 1.4. I own that lens, and it was stunning on the Sigma as well. So there's a few lenses out there that I'm still thinking about looking at, but the 24 f1.4G doesn't really interest me at all, because to be honest, I very rarely shoot down that focal length. For me, it's the 35. Now, I also heard a rumor this morning that there's rumors now also that they're saying that they might bring out a 35 1.4G lens. And what do you guys think about that? I'd like to know what you guys think about that in the live chat too. Do you think that would be something that would interest you? Because I adore the Sony 35 that they've got now, the 1.4. And I'm wondering, how much better would the G version be of that? And, and that's another interesting scenario. So rather than the 24 mil length, I'd probably, like I said, I nearly always shoot with the 35. So the 24 doesn't really interest me that much, but I'd love to know what you guys think about that 24 length. I think if I was going to get any lens down, I'd go wider than the 24. That's personally what I'd be doing, though. I'd be getting something much wider, like a 12. something around that area. But we can have a talk about that anyway in the live chat. But the a7S3 is the next story that I wanted to bring up, and that's why I'm just discussing that there is a rumour of an a7S3 and the a6-700. I'm not sure which camera is going to be released first out of these. I still think it's probably going to be Photokina by the time these are announced, and then they'll probably be announced a couple of months later. But you know, you never know. They could drop anything like this at any time. I am really hoping that they bring out an a6-700 with 4K 60p. And like I've said to you before, I don't care if that camera only has 2 to 3 minutes of 4K 60p footage. I'd be happy with that because that's all I ever shoot. I very rarely ever shoot 4K at a long period of time because the file sizes are crazy. I don't like to store them, and I also don't like to edit them. So usually I'm only shooting something that's a few seconds long, to be honest. My average is probably 5 to 10 seconds is the maximum time that I'm shooting something. And particularly if you're shooting 4K 60p, well then you're going to slow that down anyway usually, and then that 5 seconds becomes 10 seconds. So, you know, it's an interesting scenario. So I would really be happy if Sony brought out a a6-700 with 2 minutes, 3 minutes of 4K 60p, and I would adore it if they brought out a flip screen. Now we'll just have to wait and see. But clearly the next thing, we'll talk about the a7S3 in a minute. So let me bring up that 21. Because the next story is this, and this was really interesting. So Dave Dugdale has just put out a video online to say that a Sony rep has just said to him, and I would think this would be true, a Sony rep confirmed to Dave Dugdale that the Sony a7S3 will have the color science of the Venice and the SS5 III camcorders. Now this is really interesting. This was to be expected, but it's also the first time Sony officially confirms the a7S3 is coming. So looking at that, they've basically confirmed that the a7S3 is coming, and it's going to have the same color science as the SS5 III. Now I'm wondering too, depending on what they offer on this camera, where does that leave the SS5 III as well? Like, it's going to be an interesting scenario how these two cameras fit in together. This is definitely one that I'm certainly interested in getting. The honest thing is, though, I may be torn if the a6-700 has 4K 60p in it, but it's going to be interesting how that goes, because to be completely honest with you, I've found the low light of using video on the A9, the a7 III, particularly the low light video on that camera is as good as you actually need, and I will never probably need anything that's above what I can shoot those cameras in at the moment. So I think almost having this real high-end ISO in these cameras, for me personally, you may disagree, but for me personally, I actually believe that the cameras now are good enough in the ISO. These latest cameras that Sony have released, the A9, the A7R3, the A7 III particularly, and the A9 particularly, because I think they're on par with ISO, are really as good as you need for ISO. So they're going to have to offer you something extra in the A7S. Now that may be that it gives you continuous 4K recording, and you'll obviously get the 30 minutes at the moment, because it is probably going to be locked at that 30 minutes. It is going to be locked at that. So if you do need to record long 4K, then the a7S III is probably going to be the camera that you need to get. So that's one really important thing. So, you know, I'll be curious to know what you guys think about that. Do you think I'm on the right track? This is where I'm a little bit drawn, because like I said, I very rarely shoot 4K drawn out. I just don't do that, and I don't need to do that. If I'm doing a wedding ceremony, if I'm doing the reception, I'm never shooting those in 4K because they go for over half an hour and there's no reason for me to shoot in 4K. So I'm shooting those in 1080p, and then later on I edit them in in Final Cut, and I'm happy with that. The clients at this stage are not demanding 4K. In the future, yes, they may, but certainly it's going to be a while away before they get that. There is advantages to shooting in 4K though, obviously, and I do that myself often, is that you can crop in, and that's one of the big advantages. If you do shoot 4K, well, then you can take it to a 1080p timeline, and you know, you can go up 200% and you haven't lost any quality. So that's another big thing too. But 4K 60p in an a6-700 would be more than enough for me, probably, for the way that I shoot. But having said that, I still probably would buy the a7S III when it comes out. They may shock us and put things like internal NDs in that camera and other features that we just don't know yet. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But it's certainly a really interesting marketplace that we're in at the moment. And, you know, I just thought I want to open that to the chat when we go back to questions later on, because I'd really be curious to know what you guys think about that. Are you really interested in a7S III for the low light noise that camera would give you? Or do you believe that the a7 III and the a7R III and the a9 now, the ISO is good enough in video for what you're using? Remember, I never really ever go over 6400. Now, some people may, and if that's the case, you do need the a7S III. I don't do that. I always add lighting. To be honest, I very rarely go over 3200 and then I add lighting. There's a reason why I do that. It looks much nicer. So I tend to actually like to add lighting, and then I can lower the ISO a little bit and it becomes a little bit more moody. But other people have different ways of shooting. But, you know, that's just the way it is with me. But let's continue, because I wanted to go down here and talk about color science. What are we, 26? 30. So further down this page too, I noticed there's some reviews that have come out. There's a couple here that I'll talk about. And I think Jared Poland gave a discussion about using the a7 III, the Sony a7R III, and the Sony a9, and which camera would you buy. Also, that one camera, Danny did one as well the other day. I noticed too, talking about the different cameras as well, and he gave his opinion about it. So there's a few out there, and I've had a discussion about this before as well, but I'm just going to go over it again with you in a minute about what I believe, and certainly what I would tell new people coming into this marketplace, you know, which way that I think we should go if you're dealing with these cameras. And to be completely honest with you, and check out those reviews too, they're very good, but to be completely honest with you, I still think there's room for all of the cameras at this stage. I do really not believe that there's any one perfect camera. And to be completely honest with you, my favourite camera still is the a9 if I'm dealing with weddings and events, and I'll talk about why in a minute. All these things sort of matter to me, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But having said that, I adore the a7 III. That camera is just insane, and for the price that they're asking for that camera, Sony have just hit it out of the ballpark. I mean, they really have. But let's sort of discuss the three cameras now. So often I'll say to people, if you have to ask about resolution, well, then you don't really need the a7R III, because clearly you're not dealing with a camera that needs the ultimate megapixels. And this is usually what I'll say to people, because often people that are shooting that need high megapixels usually know that that's what they need. And they're the people that are shooting landscapes, they're the people that are shooting architecture, and they're also the people that are shooting more high-end fashion. So they know that the a7R III is going to be the camera that you actually need. Now, yes, you can shoot the a7R III and shoot it in Super 35 mode, and then you're getting an 18 megapixel camera. But the problem is, you do lose a little bit of quality, and I've done that multiple times, and you do lose a fraction of quality going down to shooting Super 35. You also lose that full frame look on your camera as well, which there is a difference between the full frame look and shooting Super 35. So there is a difference in doing that. So having said that, if you don't need the a7R III, and to be totally honest, you can shoot incredible landscapes with a 24 megapixel file. I used to do it with a D3S, and that was 12. Now, you'd be amazed at how much you can blow these images up without them starting to lose quality. You would actually be really surprised. And also, if you use On1 software, they have software that you can enlarge the images up, and I've found there's never any quality loss by doing it. It's that close to when I'm using my a7R2 that I really think it's a little bit mute. But there are issues where, for instance, if you're shooting birding, if you were doing things like that, or wildlife, where you would really want to crop in later on, it's much better to have that resolution. So there is an area and a time where you'll use the a7R3. And like I said, I still adore my a7R2, and if I'm doing high-end studio work, it would still be the camera that I would use, because it's the best there is for retouching. The more information that you have in those files, the better it is for retouching. But would I recommend that camera to someone just starting and coming into the industry? No, I wouldn't. I'd be recommending the a7iii over all of the cameras at this stage. Any camera out there, to be honest, that is the camera that I would recommend to anyone now starting to come into any photography at all, because I honestly believe that the a7iii is the best camera for its price in the marketplace. It really should have been $4,000. If you compare that to the Canon 5D Mark IV, if you compare it to the Nikon D850, I think that's on par with those cameras. And seriously, at $2,000 US, it is a bargain for that price. You're getting a fantastic sensor, you're getting amazing dynamic range that I showed in a video the other day. You're getting 15 stops, basically, if you shoot uncompressed RAW. If it's got the focusing of the A9, it's not quite as good as the A9, but you've got the focusing of the A9, which is incredible. And you've also got brilliant video and I think it's probably I still think the A9 is a little bit crisper, which is interesting, but you've also got these profiles that you can run on this. You can shoot log and flat and everything else. So the video on this camera is stunning. And I've been using it, like I said, like I would with my A7. I've got an A7S, but I don't ever use that now. But it's stunning for what you're getting on that camera. So at that price range, it really is a fantastic, it's not a beginner's camera, it's really a high-end camera, and I want people to understand that. You could easily run a business with that camera, buy two of them for the price that you could buy an A9. So that's one thing that you've got to think about. Well, where does the A9 come into this now, and why is that still my favourite wedding camera and event camera? The A9 has certain features that I still adore, and like I said to you before, if I'm running in silent shutter, I still don't trust the a7iii, because there may be a time when there's something critical happens. I'm shooting in silent shutter on the a7iii and I'm going to get banding in it. And I've proven that happens. If you look on the web, it is all around. It will have the potential to band. Now, you might be able to minimize it, but I'm not willing to risk shooting in silent shutter for a wedding where I may miss an amazing moment that I could never get again. And that for me is a really important thing to understand. And that's why I'm saying to people, if you have got the a7iii, I seriously would not recommend shooting weddings in silent shutter. I would be using, unless you're doing daylight, that should be fine, and unless no one's really moving. You really should use mechanical shutter. And the mechanical shutter is excellent on that camera, and you can shoot 10 frames per second. It's all you will normally need. So in that situation, I'd be saying make sure you use mechanical shutter. The A9 is the only camera, and really it is still a game-changing camera. It's the only full-frame camera that you can use the silent shutter and be basically 100% sure that it's going to be okay. And I've never had an image that's banded. And I can say that, and I've shot that now for over a year, and I've never had an image that's been damaged by banding. The other thing too that's the game changer on that camera for me is that obviously the 20 frames per second can matter, and for dancing that does matter for me, because that can be the difference of getting the shot or missing that perfect shot. And also there's no rolling shutter on that. And again, this is the difference where the A9 is over that the Sony a7R3 and the Sony a7iii. So when people say that the A9 is not worth the money it is, I actually think it is worth the money that it is, because that sensor in that camera is unlike anything else that's out there. To be able to shoot 1/32,000th of a second on that camera is unbelievable. And that I can put the Sony 1.4 and shoot at 1.4 in broad daylight, wide open, is amazing for me because I love to shoot wide open all the time, and that has changed the way that I shoot. So sometimes they do bring out cameras that can help you in your photography, and really all of these cameras can do that with the focusing. The eye focus is brilliant on all of these cameras. The A9 and the a7 III is better than the a7R III. It's definitely better than that camera in focusing. But all cameras are amazing, but the A9 still is superior in those little areas. So, it's just what I think at the moment. So I do think the A9 still has its place, but you have to be able to justify that cost. You have to be able to justify that $4,500. It's nearly $7 Australian, I think. So you've got to be able to justify that. So if you were just starting or if you were just getting into wedding photography, I wouldn't recommend that you go out and buy an A9. No, I wouldn't. I'd recommend to get two a7 IIIs, and then you've still got a little bit of money left towards putting it towards a lens. And that's the way that I'd be going if I was you guys. Will I be buying the a7 III, a7R III? Probably not, because I've still got the a7R II and I'm happy with that. And because I've got the a7 II and a7 III and the A9, I don't feel like I need the a7R III. But I may get the latest version of that. If my a7R II broke, I would get the a7R III in a heartbeat. But I probably will get the a7S III or the a6-700 when that comes out. But I just wanted to have that discussion with you, and we'll come back to that later. And talk about that too, but in this live chat, because I'd really be interested to see what you guys think about that. So let's go on to the next story, because this is pretty cool actually. 3610. Because this is a new pancake lens. It's rumoured. And this could be fantastic. Again, if you love that 35 focal length that I do, this would be amazing, because what a fantastic street combo this would be. It's got Allen elements. It's special coatings and stuff, I believe, that they talk about with this lens. But it's a 1.8. It's a 35mm. Like I said, that's my favourite focal length. And I'll put the links down for all these down below, guys, so you will be able to read these later on if you want to have a look at them. But brilliant. I mean, I love pancake lens. I used to use pancake lens on my Panasonic years ago when I had the GH5. It's fantastic if you want to be minimalistic for travel, but this being a 35 but a 1.82 is brilliant, and I really do hope that this comes out, because I would buy this for sure. I still love my 35 f2.8, and I do use that for street photography quite a lot. But this would be one that I certainly would buy, because, wow, if you do want to travel really, really light, and at 1.8 may be fantastic for a gimbal. I'm not sure whether it's autofocus, does it say? It doesn't say. It might be manual focus. Yeah, there may be manual focus, not sure. It probably is manual focus. Even then, it'd be good on a gimbal if you work out your time. Often I will manual focus and then keep that distance. So it's interesting anyway. So just wanted to show that with you in the discussion. Let's go down to the Tamron, which is 37. Oh, it's 38 actually. So the Tamron lens, there is now samples that I wanted to show you, and like I said, I'll put the links down below. With these two, you can download these as high-res files now, so if you did want to check out how the Tamron lens looks, you can have a look at these as well. So if you click on it there, I think you just have to leave your email address or something, and then you can download these lenses as well. I do believe now that you can pre-order this now at Amazon as well. So you can now pre-order at Amazon, and it's the same price, $7.99. Certainly a lens that I'm interested in looking at. Look, to be honest, I very rarely shoot zoom lenses anymore, and the only real zoom lenses at the moment that I'm using are the 16-35 f4 and the 70-200 f4. They're the main lenses that I use in zoom lenses. The 24-70, I've got the 24-70 Sony lens, and I very rarely use it. It's not a lens that I love, but it is a lens that a lot of wedding photographers particularly use. The the 2470 and the 70-200 is a real staple of wedding photographers and event photographers. I tend to nearly shoot all my weddings now with just the 35 and the 85. And occasionally I'll grab the 16-35 or the 70-200, but most of it's done with prime lenses. So I'm not sure whether I'll get one. I might try and get one of these just to test it though. But it could come in handy sometimes if I was doing dance concerts and stuff and I need a 2.8 lens at that focal length. It could be interesting to have. But at that price range, like when you're talking about that price, it is a really good price to have though. I mean, $799 is really quite reasonable for what they're offering if the quality is good. And the samples that I've been looking at seem to be pretty good. I showed you the other day the focusing, and the focusing seemed to be pretty good. There was a fraction of hunting I noticed, but we still have to wait for the release version to sort of see how it is, and that will be out soon. So I'm hoping soon to get some reviews of that we can have a look at and see how that actually goes. So anyway, that's really interesting. Anyway, so now you can pre-order that at Amazon. Obviously, you can pre-order it too at B&H as well. And I believe it's going to ship sometime next month. Oh, there you go, May the 24th. It's going to be in stock. So I think these are going to sell like hotcakes. So if you were interested in getting one, you might want to grab one because they may be on back order for a while. We're going to have to wait and see. Let's go to the next story. 41, which is the new Sigma. I noticed this, which is a bit disappointing, that the Sigma now have been delayed. They're now saying that these lenses are going to come out at the end of May. So they're now delayed. They're saying most of them should be available in late April. Yes. So they were meant to be late April, but now they're saying they'll be available late May to mid-June. So obviously they're being held back a little bit, whether that's production issues or something else, we don't know. Perhaps they're trying to fine-tune these lenses to make them work better on the Sony. We still have to wait and see. But it's interesting that we just have to wait. Like I said, there's a couple of lenses out there that really do interest me. The 105 is not listed on this, I noticed, but like I said, the 135 1.8 at 1399 sounds like a reasonably priced lens, and I've used that before and it was outstanding. So that's one that I may pick up. So that that's probably going to be around that June mark as well. And like I said, the 105 too, which still I don't think pricing has even been released on yet. That's massive. I'm not sure how much that's going to cost. They're not really listing that at this stage. But anyway, so we do have to wait longer, guys, for that to come out. But it's certainly something that I will be looking at when they're released, and it's certainly something that I will be getting, or probably will be getting, at least for review. Next story, and I am going to come back to questions, guys, so keep firing away. I will come back to those. Which, what are we, 42, 35. I noticed that DxO have confirmed, have gone into bankruptcy, which is really interesting. Let me just move this over. So DxO have confirmed bankruptcy, says Nik Collection update still on track. And if you've used Nik Collection, it's really quite a good, they're quite good plugins for Photoshop. I can't remember who they were originally owned by, but then they were taken over by, I think they were owned by Google or something initially, weren't they? Or whatever, I can't remember. And then DxO took them over. So anyway, they're still saying that they're going to bring an update. But the interesting thing is, though, that DxO have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. So they're obviously not doing very well at all. So if you use their software, you might be in a little bit of trouble. So it's interesting that they're talking about this now. But they're saying that the Nik Collection, they did get it from Google, in 2017. And they're saying that they believe that the new updated version of Nik Collection will be in June 2018. So they are still producing it. And like I said, they are great plugins. So, it's a shame that this is happening to another company. I'm not sure whether people use the DxO Photolab processing software. I did try it years ago. It was really good, actually. The noise reduction and everything was fantastic on that program. I haven't used it for years, though. So anyway, they're in a little bit of strife. So I just wanted to mention that. But Nik is still going to be updated according to that. So let's hope it does actually keep going. Another story that I wanted to show you here was this 44, 25, and I'll put the link for this because you can have a look and it's just beautiful. This is obviously London, but this is a gigapixel shot. Now, obviously, you're going to have to download this and have a look yourself, but this is pretty amazing because what they've done is they've released a 7.3 gigapixel time-lapse of London, and it's over 24 hours. So you can view it at any time over that 24 hours. So have a look at it. Like I said, I'll leave the link down below, but it's just gorgeous. And check that out because I love stuff like that. It's just, it's the sort of geeky side to me. I really do love it. Cheers. But I just wanted to put that in a link that you can actually have a look at. And obviously there's a discussion there about how it was done and things like that. So it was shot with the D850. It's 44 megapixel full frame sensor paired with a 300mm 2.8 lens. And you can read the words on the signs from 5 miles away. So yeah, check it out, guys. And like I said, I'll leave the comments, like I said, in the comments down below so you can have a look. Next story is about the Nikon mirrorless. And I did talk about this with you the other day, but I just wanted to bring it up on the live because some people won't have seen the other thing that I put up. They're still saying, and I honestly think I'm a bit sad really that they're taking so long to bring this out. I really feel sad for Nikon shooters that they're still basically going to be waiting 12 months before they get a Nikon camera. They're not even saying what the lens mount will be. They're talking about having an adapter on the camera to enable you to use the other lenses. So it's a bit sad that I think it's taking them so long. And the problem for them is that this gives Sony another 12 months to get out another camera to combat whatever they release. And remember, it's taken Sony basically 4 versions to get where they're up to. I cannot see Canon or Nikon pulling a rabbit out of the hat and having this camera immediately do everything out of the bat. Now, for instance, if it's using an adapter, I can almost guarantee that that's not, and they admitted it, that it won't focus as well as a native lens. Immediately, I think you're going to find that it doesn't work as well. And the reason why I bring this up too, because Matt Granger in this next story said that he tested all of the adapters that were available for Nikon. Now, obviously, this isn't made for Nikon, but these people are not silly. Comlight, Velo, and Photodiox, they've put a lot of money into doing these adapters. And if you watch the actual video that is there, and I've used them too, because remember, I've also came from Nikon, and when I first came over, I still had a few Nikon lenses. At the time, though, they only had manual focus lenses, but I have tried the autofocus lenses before, and it tends to suck. Look, they're fine if you're just shooting a portrait where the subject doesn't move. The second you get something that needs tracking, these autofocus lenses on the adapters suck, and I don't know how Nikon are going to get over that. I just don't think they're going to be able to. So I think if you're dealing with video, if you're dealing with anything that's tracking on these lenses, I mean, I might be wrong. When they bring it out, they might have just done something amazing and it works, but I just can't see it. But let me know what you guys think too in the live chat. I'd like to know what you guys think, but they really have missed the boat here. I think they probably would have been better, to be honest, to keep the body bigger and then kept the lenses the same. And I think that's probably the way that they should have gone, because that way the focusing and everything wouldn't have been an issue. Now remember, video is still an issue with Nikon now. None of their cameras can do video focusing very well. It sucks, to be totally honest. They just haven't got what Canon have got with their dual pixel, and they haven't got what Sony have got. So they have a long way to come yet in their mirrorless market to bring out a camera that is really good. And if you think that you've got to wait another 12 months for this, it's going to hurt them. So, you know, I just don't think it's the right way to go. And I'm really disappointed for them. And I've said this in the chat when I answered questions, not in the live chat, but when I answered questions in the last video I put about this, I really do hope that Nikon survive, because we need Sony to innovate, and the same with Canon. If those companies disappeared, Sony would then have no need to innovate, and we'd be waiting 5 years for them to change a camera. And I really don't want that to happen. So I really do want those companies to innovate and be good at what they do, because it will push Sony. And then when Sony are pushed, they always bring out something amazing, and they've never held back. And that's one, apart from the A9 with the picture profiles. But I really hope that Nikon do well, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I think waiting another 12 months for this, and even the new Canon waiting 12 months is really crazy. They should have seen this 2 years ago and had this out. And really, they've missed the boat, I think. And it's a bit sad, but yeah. There you go. So, like I said, I will put all of the links down below in there as well. But let me just put down here, because it's question time. What are we on? 50 minutes. So let's open it up to questions, and I'll come back and then fire away. So guys, if you have any questions at all, fire away, because I've got another 10 minutes or so, and then I'm heading out for a coffee. What else have we got? So let's have a look. I've read most of these in the early thing. Dwayne said, got the a7iii, bought the 55 Zeiss, but thinking going 35 1.8 and 85 1.8. Your thoughts on what's a good starting setup for an aspiring pro? Well, yes, the perfect two lenses, Dwayne, is the 35 and the 85 for me. That's what I use most of the time. But the more I'm starting to use the 55 again, the more I'm starting to love that lens. So it depends really on what you want to do. If you want to go video, honestly, that 55 is outstanding and it's stunning. And I don't think I'll ever get rid of that lens now for what it's given me in the video aspect of it. You just saw how it worked in the studio as well. If you can only afford two lenses though, the 55 and the 85 are too close together, so that would be an issue. Yes, I'd say you're better off to get a 35 and an 85 would be perfect. I could shoot a wedding with just those two lenses. If I didn't have any other lens, I could still use those two lenses and shoot a whole wedding, and I could quite confidently do that. I wouldn't need anything wider. I mean, occasionally I would. I'd just have to back up, and if I had to go further, well, then I would be in trouble. But I could shoot 90% of what I had with that 35 to the 85. Ario said beauty dish as a shadow filler on the bottom. Yeah, I discussed that, and you'll see that when you look at Kiara's studio shoot. You'll see all of that. Dennis said the eye autofocus even grabbed my swimmer's eye as he came up through the air. The eye autofocus now is incredible on these cameras. Glasses don't seem to phase it. If you turn away, it'll still grab the focus. Let me just move this so I'm in the middle. It's just awesome. The eye autofocus on the new Sony cameras is just blows your mind, actually, how good it is. It's just incredible. Mario said, very nice pictures, thank you. They'll be great too, Mario, once I edit them. Like, you've seen them straight raw out of camera. Remember too, guys, that when you're dealing with anything that you're talking about with studio or anything, the whole idea is to get it as close as possible at the beginning to being perfect as you can. The only thing I'm not happy about this, to be totally honest, and like I'm always honest with you guys, I think the feet over here is a little bit over, so I'm probably going to darken that off a little bit in post. But you just have to balance with how much time it takes to do it. I was running a 4-light setup to get this, and but I am really happy with how this looks straight out of camera, and it will only be improved now with a little bit of editing. This is raw though, so I haven't done anything in Lightroom to this at all. You're seeing this as they've been directly just taken out of camera, so you're looking at them without anything done at all. And you can see that basically, I mean, I could use these almost as they are right now. There's not much needs to be done at them, but being a perfectionist, I will always do some editing as well. But, you know, like I said, the eye autofocus was just tack sharp on these. It's just stunning. You know, and it worked even from a fair way away when you look at, you know, how sharp it is. This was the 55, so I'm really happy with how that it, you know, with how it looks. But yeah, anyway, so I do always try and get it close. Skipper said, I love my new 55 1.8, using it on vacation here in Japan, and it's so light. It's also the fastest focusing Sony lens, I think, by far. It's also the best lens for low light work. So if you're dealing with working in low light, the 55, I believe, is their fastest low light lens. It's stunning. Thanks for the great work. Have you used the 7200 much yet? I adore that lens, Skipper, and I'll never get rid of that lens. I really love it. And I also love the 16 to 35 as well, f4. If you look at Kiara's images I'll open one up for you to show that lens being used, just so you can see it. Where are we? Melbourne shoot, Royal Hotel. Rated. If I go to 5, let me just bring this up so you can have a look. So this was shot with the 16 to 35 f4. So it was shot there at 1/125th of a second at f4 at ISO 1600, and I adore it. I love the color, just love the feel of that lens. Again, that lens has been used in multiple images. I think it was used here as well with Kiara sitting on the bed. Yes, it was. 16 to 35 was also used there as well. And it was also used here with Kiara standing on the staircase. So the 16 to 35 is beautiful, and I do use that in areas where, you know, that I have to shoot very wide, and I love that aspect of how that lens works. Yeah, and don't be put off by the f4 version of that lens. You know, it really is quite stunning, and again, that's another one that was shot with the 16 to 35 f4, and that was one that was outside with the 16 to 35 f4 as well. These were all shot, that was the a7R2, that one there was shot with the a7R2, that one there was shot with the a7R3, that was shot with the a7iii as well, a7iii I mean. So yeah, I'm using multiple cameras there, but yeah, but don't be put off. The f4 version of those lenses is ample. You do not need the G Master lens to get amazing results, guys. So if you can't afford the G Master and you don't want to lug around the weight, the f4 version is still a fantastic lens. Heldon said, in your opinion, which camera manufacturer offers the best colour science for skin tones? Canon probably still is the best, Heldon, but look, to be honest, it's that close now that it never bothers me. I did a test between the 5D Mark IV and the A9, and they are almost identical. It really is mute now. So don't get suckered in now by colour science on skin tones, and the amount that they're different is only a fraction of a slider now in Lightroom to make them look identical. And I can tell you now that there is nothing wrong at all with the skin tones in the A9, the a7R3 and the a7iii. The colour science is amazing, and they've just said that the a7S3 is going to have new colour science too. So I really do now believe that the colour science in those cameras is outstanding, and I think the skin colour looks, you know, it looks beautiful. Like I said, when you're dealing with that studio shoot, when we were looking at on those, not that one, when we're looking at, where is it? Studio. When you were looking at Kiara's studio shoot with these straight out of camera, I mean, you're looking at those images when they're straight out of camera on those, and they are beautiful. Like that, you know, there's nothing wrong with the skin tones on these images at all. And like I said, I've done high-end work all my life, and there is nothing, like I said, these are directly out of camera, and that's the colour science that you're getting, and I think it's beautiful. Let me just come back to here. So I really think that's really a bit of a mute comment now. It's usually Canon fanboys held in now that it's one of the last things that they can argue about, and they'll mention Sony skin tones, but I don't think it's the truth anymore. I'm to Browns here. G'day, mate. How you going? V for Valley. Hey, David, I'm late. Well, at least you got in here. Christopher said a6 700 or a7iii. I'd still get the a7iii, Christopher, if that was my choice. You still can't beat the full frame look, but that's basically what I believe. What What else have we got? David said, oh, good to see you here, brother. Harold said, hell yeah, a cheaper 35 1.4 or 1.8 would be awesome. If they bring out the G Master, for instance, well, that's going to be quite a bit dearer if it was a 24 or the 35 G Master. But I'm really happy with my Sony 35 1.4. I also love the Sony 35 2.8. And I've got the 24 1.8 Sony lens on this, on my a6 here, and I love that because that gives you the 35mm focal length as well. I'm always drawn back to that focal length of 35mm. So Oreo said Sigma 35 keeps getting lukewarm reviews due to inconsistent autofocus. Yeah, and that's the thing I'm waiting on, Oreo, to see how it goes. But is that with the adapter, Oreo, or is that the Sony version of that? I'll be curious to know, because I believe the Sony version is going to focus better than the adapted version. Lance said the 55 will be my next purchase. I found a like new used for $700 US. It's great. Love your vids in the woods with Kiara. Yeah, that was all shot with 55. So it shows you what that 55 can do. And I'm using that now extensively on my weddings, on all the videos that I'm doing, on the gimbal with video. I love it. Michael said, there seems to be a load of E-mount lenses coming out, which can only be a good thing. Let's hope Sony lower the prices of the GM lenses, especially if Sigma and Tamron are to bring out quality lenses. Well, it may happen, and that's why I'm saying competition is always good. So let's hope that that does happen. Let's hope that because now Sigma and Tamron and others are bringing out all these new lenses, that Sony say, well, we have to compete, so they're going to lower prices. I mean, that would be the best thing ever if we could get that to happen, and I really do hope that that's, you know, is the thing that's going to actually happen as well. Oh, by the way, guys, too, Kiara was just so happy. She's hit 2,000 viewers on Instagram today. I'm going to put this on the chat just in here because please like her. You'll make her, she'll be jumping around for joy. Like her on Instagram under that. All her girlfriends are getting so jealous. It's underscore Kiara Watts. So like her on Instagram, and she's going to be, she'll be jumping around. She's been making all her girlfriends so jealous because she's getting all these likes on Instagram. They're all claiming that she's been paying for views. So it's quite interesting. I've been cracking up about it. What else have we got? Stacey said, g'day Stacey, pre-ordered the Tamron 28 to 75 2.8 this morning. Woohoo! You have to let us know how it is when you've got it. Stacey said, haven't caught you live for a while. Well, good to see you in here. Skipper said, David, thanks for the video on the 55. I love it. I'm going to do a video on that again. I love that lens so much again now. I've re-fallen in love with it. I'm going to do a video. I might do that next week, actually. I'm going to do a video about it again, talking about how much I love that lens with the a7 III. So I'm going to do that, so stay tuned for that. I love it so far. Have you used the 70-200 much? Yeah, I've talked about that, and I want landscapes from the 16 to 35. Yep, and I adore that lens too, and I've just showed that lens being used. Dennis said, I'm thinking of getting the Rocky on Samyang 35. Are you loving it? How does it perform? So he's just asked, how does that perform? There's nothing wrong with the Rocky on. Some of them, though, are a little bit noisy in video. So that's one thing you have to take consideration of. But for stills, they're fantastic. Yeah, and Michael said, depends how many of your clients have 4K TVs. Well, I'm not getting any, Michael, yet that are asking for 4K footage, put it that way. Nearly everyone at this stage is happy with 4K 60p, and I think it's probably going to be that way for another couple of years. I could probably safely say that I could still work in 1080p for another couple of years. Also, the thing too that I've found as well, if you shoot in 1080p and you upsample to 4K in Final Cut, the results actually are much better than what you would think they are. So that's another thing that you can do as well, and it works amazingly well. Chuck said, not interested in high ISO, much more interested in 4K 120. Yeah, see, everyone's different, Chuck, yeah, and what they think and what they want. Steve said, g'day from Adelaide. G'day, Steve, how are you? Jay's saying hello from the USA. Chuck, video is already good in any light I find, except maybe if you live in a cave. And that's the truth. These new cameras, I'm telling you, the a7 III and the a9 and even the a7R3, not quite as good, but those three cameras are outstanding in low light. You've seen other reviews out there. Max Yurov gave a review of the a7 III, and he said basically up till a quite high ISO that the a7 III was better. So clearly the high ISO for video on these cameras now is almost mute. I use the a7 III in the city with Kiara. Go and watch that video if you want to. That was all shot with the a7 III under really challenging light. And the ISO is outstanding and it's so clean. I've had people say to me, wow, that is so clean. And that's using the a7 III. You really don't need much better now. I actually don't think you do need any better now than what that gives you now. But obviously they're going to give us more. But I can quite comfortably shoot with those cameras I've got now and be not worried about lighting at all. Oreo said, I'm going to buy the S3 unless it's really... I'm not going to buy the S3 unless it's something really revolutionary. Yeah, like they may put something like internal NDs in there, Oreo, that would be brilliant. You know, if they do that, I don't think they're going to put an articulating screen on that camera. So I just don't think that's going to happen. But they are going to have to give us something in that camera, and perhaps extended 4K 60p would be enough. They may even give you 120. I mean, you don't know. They may give you 4K 120p in that. I mean, I'll probably get it, but I'll still wait and see what it is before I make that decision. Jace D said, do you have any suggestions to get Panasonic colours in the Sony a7 III without grading? Not without grading, but there was a utility, what was it called? Leaming LUT is the best thing that I've found if you want to match cameras. And I matched the Panasonic cameras to the Sony cameras using that Leaming LUT. It's LEEMING LUT1. You can purchase that. I purchased it and it did match the Panasonics to the Sony cameras very well, but you still had to shoot in profiles. Not straight out of the bat, no. Jay said 2470 2.8 or f4 for landscape and street photography. Well, look, it's a hard decision to make, Jay. I'm happy with the f4 versions of those lenses, particularly with the ISO now of those cameras. If you want to work in really, really low light, then you might find the 2.8 is an advantage. But I'm quite comfortable working with the f4. You saw with Kiara when I showed you that in the hotel, it was extremely challenging light and the f4 excelled. It just depends really on what you want and what weight you want to carry around. Hopeaholics saying, hi, how are you? Dennis said, I'm so happy with my the a7 III. I can't see getting the R line till the R4 comes out, and a lot of people may be the same. If you've got the R4, well, you've also got a fantastic camera. Brilliant camera. The R4 is an amazing camera. The R3, I mean. Front range photography and drone at DSLR. At what point do you think someone should leave the DSLR mirrorless world for video and transition to true video camera? People are expecting cameras to be as good as video cameras. Well, it's a hard thing to say because, look, for me personally, I'm at the point where I do definitely not need a full-on video camera. And I know even Michael, who has the FS5 too and stuff now, he's thinking about selling it, I think, the last time I'd heard. You might find the a7S III is the point where that you could say you no longer need those higher-end cameras. It depends. Look, for what I do, which is video and fusion, I'm not a full-on videography. The cameras now that Sony offer are ample. If you were into high-end video, I suppose there's still places where you would be using an SS5 and things like that. But it's hard for me to answer that front range because I don't do it. So I can only talk to you about my experience from shooting video and stills at the same time, that I just would not need any of these full video cameras. But the a7S III may be the one that transitions people like you, for instance, over to mirrorless. But you'll have to wait and see what they're offering. Christopher Dillon said, I've gone from shooting for billboards to now Snapchat ads. I should have covered, it should be covered. Yes, you certainly will with the a7 III. Stacey said, okay, I missed the loud obnoxious shirts. I know, I'm pretty drab today, aren't I? It's actually raining out there today. I should have put a louder shirt on. I will next week for you, Stacey. Patrick said hello from Canada. Very nice chain. You and Kiara are doing a wonderful job. Thank you so much. Michael said, is there a big difference in the EVF quality between the a7iii and the a7R3? I haven't got the a7R3, but that has the EVF, same EVF as the A9, I believe. And there is, yes. But you'll only notice it if you look at one after the other. If you're using that camera, and it's the same as the a7R2 basically, the a7 III has the same EVF as the a7R2. They're both the same. Love you guys too. If you could give me a thumbs up too, guys, please. I really would appreciate it. The a7R2, if you go like this, look, if you go like this is the a7 III. Oh, this is the A9. But let me just switch cameras. If I'm shooting like this, and then I go like this, you will notice a difference. All right, you will actually notice that there's a difference. But when I'm shooting a wedding and I'm grabbing two different cameras, not straight usually after one another, I don't notice the difference, to be honest, and it's good enough. The area that I can tell you with the a7 III that there is a difference is if you are manually focusing in video, punching in, it's not as sharp as what the A9 or the a7R3 will give you. Sony had to cut costs somewhere, and that obviously was one of the areas that they had to cut. I'm willing to accept that for what you've got with that camera at that price range, but there is a difference, yes. And I'm not going to lie to you, and like I've always told you guys, I'll always be truthful. The a7 III, the EVF is definitely not as good as what the A9 or the a7R3 is. But if you don't look at one after the other, you will not notice for stills. If you manually focus for video, you will struggle with the a7 III because it's not as sharp. Chuck said, but to be honest, guys, I very rarely ever shoot manual now. I very rarely shoot manual now with the a7R3 or the A9 because the autofocus on that camera for video is insane. And I just don't need to anymore. Chuck said, if you print medium size, the R models are noticeably better, but it's noticeable in print. Chuck also said the a7 III is indeed, it is great value. It is. I know people say you shouldn't say 2,000 is not a lot of money, but what you're getting at that camera for that price range is outstanding. I think it really is outstanding. John said, hey David, fellow Melbourne photographer, always caught the replay, finally catching the live show. It's great to see you catching a live one. John, appreciate the live show, making an open, honest live forum to discuss photography and also giving us frank and honest tips and insights, showing us real life scenarios. You're a real asset to the photography community. Thank you for your time and effort. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate that. David said, look at what the a7 III did to Canon prices. I know they've started to really drop their prices. They're giving specials at the moment. Interesting, isn't it? Competition is always a good thing. Chuck said, A9, no PP equals fail. Well, I don't agree with that, Chuck, for me personally. All the videos that you've been seeing that I've been shooting, check Kiara's videos in the forest, the Melbourne shoot that I did, that one that I've just done in the hotel, Craig's Royal Hotel. They were all shot in the standard profile. I've been using the standard profile nearly all the time now. I very rarely ever go into picture profiles anymore, but that's the way I'm shooting. So for me, personally, I used to go rave on about Sony adding the picture profiles for the A9, but to be honest now, it doesn't bother me anymore because I'm so happy with the standard profile now. The colors are astounding. Everyone, that video of Kiara in the forest has had around 50,000 views. Everyone in that immediately has asked me what picture profile I use because they want to know. And they're basically astounded when I tell them that it's been shot with the standard profile. And honestly, the results you're getting standard profile in that camera is stunning. But if you need picture profiles, then the A9 obviously is not for you, yes. Dennis said the a7 III is better for birds and action than the R3 because it's better focusing. Yes, it will definitely be better, but you haven't got that resolution to crop in, and that's the issue, Dennis. That's what you've got to work out. Do you need the resolution to crop later to, you know, have a bigger print? JD said Sony should appoint you as a brand ambassador. Don't think that's going to happen, JD. I'm also Aussie. David said this 6D price drop 40p. this week. I know there's a lot of them have dropped. They were offering big specials on a lot of stuff. Chuck said, Dennis, the R3 and the a7iii AF is basically the same for what I've tried. I've used them quite a lot, Chuck, and I've found the a7iii, look, the A9 and the a7iii definitely beat the R3, definitely. I can tell the difference. You may not be able to, but I can. They are close in some aspects, but it's still better. Chuck said 133,000 shutter means you're shooting in crap light. No, I disagree, Chuck. That has made a difference of me. So often I love to shoot wide open, and that's in sunlight. And look, sometimes if you're dealing with a wedding in bright sunlight, and I can shoot 132,000, then shoot at 1.4, for me that's a game changer. You may not like that. Well, then clearly, if you don't like that, well, then it's not for you, mate. I mean, you have no need for that. But for me to be able to shoot at 132,000th of a second in bright sunlight at f1.4 has changed the game for me, and I adore that aspect with the A9. But if it's not for you, it's not for you. Oreo said, I have both the a7R3 and the a7iii, and my impression so far is that the low ISO with perfect exposure, the R3 images on average look a bit better. The difference increases if you size R3 images down to a7iii res. Lewis said, less wear and tear on the A9. Well, there is, because you're not using any electronic parts, basically. You're not moving anything moving anyway. Oreo said, however, I also have the impression that the dynamic range in the a7iii is better. So if you need to make a difficult recovery, the a7iii is slightly better. Gene said, I imagine you'll get less noise on the a7R3 when you downsize the images. You would if you do a comparison at the same size. What else have we got? V for Valley said, if you have the chance to try the lower f15. I've been looking at that lens recently, and I may get that. I'm not sure. I'm still looking. I'm not in any hurry. I've got the 16 to 35 at this stage, but I have been looking at that Laowa, and it does interest me because everyone is saying it's really beautiful and sharp. So it is a lens that actually interests me, yes. Joe said, my friend actually played with it and said you will not be sorry when you get the Tamron. Oh, that's interesting. Events with close and mid-length 2870 comes in handy. It does, because basically you've got that extra reach, which is an interesting thing as well. We're going to finish shortly, guys. What else? I'm just trying to see where anyone else has done. Michael's here. G'day, Michael. Good to see you in here. I didn't realise you were in here. This shirt is black. I love it. Michael said Sony Pro support is #1. I know they are. They're amazing. I didn't know my A9 was one of the recalls on the hot shoe. I called them. They told me to bring it in today. Got there at 12. They fixed it and came home 2 hours later. I've actually got to send mine in, actually. They contacted me, Michael, to say I've got one of the A9s with that issue with the hot shoe. I just haven't got around to doing it, but I will actually do it. Does it look any different? I'm just curious to know what the difference is. But I do have to send it in. But I've found Sony Pro support now to be outstanding. I'll contact them. They'll pick it up that day, and then basically it'll be back to me within 2 days. I mean, it's fantastic. If there's an issue with the camera, they'll replace it while I'm waiting. Sony Pro support now is stunning. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. Creative Films said people who have both the a7iii and the a7iii have said no difference in focusing for photography and video. I've noticed a difference though, but everyone might see something different. Is it worth the wait for the a7iii coming in the fall? It depends how urgently you need a camera, Justin. If you need it now, go for it. If you're willing to wait, you're going to still wait till the end of the year though, I think. Michael said the A9 beast. I know I love my A9. It's still my favourite camera. Creative Films said, I'm pretty sure it will be worth the wait. Rick said, hi Dave, good to see you here, Rick. Iron de Brown said, if we all get the Mark III of the cameras in 2008, what do you think will come in 2019? A9 II could be. It's going to be interesting. What's announced next? Rick said, just joined. What lens do you usually take to a typical... He didn't finish it. Okay, Supreme said, well, hello, I'm just listened because I'm still shooting with the a6500. Nothing wrong with the a6500. Nothing wrong with that camera at all. JP said, are gimbals ever used in your video production during weddings? Yes, it is. I use the Moza Aircross. I'll show you the exact one that I'm using, and it's stunning. It's the best gimbal I've ever used. Let me just open up a new window. And guys, I'm not sponsored by Moza, so don't think I'm doing this to say that I'm actually sponsored by them. I'm not sponsored by any of these guys. It's this one. So let me have a look. This is the one that I actually use. I don't use this. I don't use the handle. I just don't need to do that because I always like to work with one handle. But this gimbal, seriously, it's $489 US. You can also get it from Amazon as well, but it's on B&H. But it is stunning. I just adore the way it self-calibrates. You just put the camera on top, press 2 buttons, it self-calibrates. It has an amazing remote control, which is here. It's got this little remote control that can do follow mode. It can do everything. You can calibrate from this if you need to. It's just, you've got to buy that separately though. I think it was $100. But honestly, I've used all the gimbals out there. I'm a bit of a gimbal junkie. I've got quite a few of them. I found that this Moza Aircross is by far the best gimbal that I've ever used. And like I said, I purchased this out of my own money. I don't get anything from Moza at all. Like anything that I've got, I only give you what I use and what I've paid for in my own money. And I adore that gimbal, and it's never let me down, and it's outstanding. It really is an outstanding gimbal, and I can't recommend that enough. And that's coming from a user that is not sponsored by them at all. Oh, thank you so much, Tony. Thank you so much for that donation. Really appreciate that. Mario said, great show again, David. I'm happy that you could have been on live for the first time this time. That's great that you're on here. What lens do you take for your usual weddings? It's the 35 and the... Look, I can tell you the exact lenses mainly. 16 to 35 for wide. I take the 35 f1.4. I take the 85 Batis and then the 70 to 200. That's my photography lenses. Video, I'll take the 55 definitely now all the time. But video is a different thing where I take a few more. But for photography, it's nearly always just use the 35 and the 85 Batis. They're my main two lenses that I'll use. Can that gimbal handle the 35? Well, it handles... let me just go back to this for a second. What does it handle specs? Let's just go to the weight. I'll tell you how much it can handle. It takes 4 pounds, 1.8 kilograms. So as long as it falls within that range, yes, it should work. I don't know because I've never done it. I don't want to be lugging around that type of weight. But it will take 4 pounds or 1.8 kilos. So you just have to weigh what it is. I tend to use on that gimbal, I'm using the 55 a lot. And I also like to use this one. I use this lens all the time, which is the 10 to 18. So I'm using that on the gimbal, and this is fantastic. This is only f4. This is stabilized. I adore this lens as well. It's really light. Remember, if I'm using a gimbal, I want to work light. I don't want to be struggling. And to use that lens, the 35 f2.8 is a good lens too, that you could use that on that gimbal as well. But they're the lenses that I use. The 10 to 18, the 55 1.8, and the 35 and the 10 to 18 millimeter lens is what I use on that. Michael Spread, you were supposed to see the uploaded clip. It was an... Oh, I didn't know what that meant. Tony gave me a donation. Thank you so much, mate. JP said, do you use a gimbal just for tracking shots? No, I use them nearly all the time now. I'll keep the camera on a gimbal and just keep walking around with it all the time. Not just for tracking. I'll use it for steady, still shots, everything. You can use the remote control and have it just sat down on the actual feet, and you can control it using the joystick. So it's basically using a pan. So you can pan, do all other things just on the gimbal. The batteries last 12 hours. It's replaceable batteries. There's nothing bad to say about that gimbal at all, guys. Don't just go by the other gimbals that are out there like, I don't know what the other ones are. There's always ones that you see online all the time. Look at Moza Aircross. Have a look at it because it seriously is a fantastic gimbal. What's the other big gimbal I used? I used them in the shop when I compared that to that, and I found the Moza was better in the fact the auto calibration, the remote control. I loved it. I really did love it, and it's fantastic. Bam, yeah, Michael said bam. Michael, Oreo said, you have sold me on the Aircross. Yeah, it's great, Oreo. Get one. It's brilliant. They have another higher end one. I think it's just the Moza Air. I'm using the Aircross, which is the lighter version. If you've got a heavier camera, I think you can get the Air as well. Ray said, hello, David. JP said, what monopod or fluid head do you use? I use, I'll show you. I'll just grab it. I've got a couple of these guys. I actually have 2 or 3. I'm such a junkie with hardware. I've got a Manfrotto one as well, but I've got this one which I really like. Let me see if I can get you to see the version number. And I really like this one. What I like about this one though is that it has extremely wide legs. Like the Manfrotto one that I've got doesn't have legs that are this wide, and basically I can use this as a tripod, and that's what I like about it. I can leave the camera on this. I'll stand it up. I can leave a camera on this and it won't fall over. Now you just have to leave it a minute though, because it does wobble a little bit at first, but then it becomes rock steady. So this is fantastic if you're dealing with working like I do when I'm doing Fusion and I'm trying to take stills and have video going at the same time. I can use this because the legs on this are massive. And that's the difference between this and something like the Manfrotto, which has really small legs. And I'd be very wary about leaving the Manfrotto without with the camera on it. Whereas that I can leave quite safely with the camera on it. I mean, you do have to be careful if it's really windy, obviously, or someone could knock it over, but it's so stable, it's just brilliant, and I love that monopod, and it's great. So that's the one that I use. Yeah, Zhiyun is the one that I used, yeah, and I found the Moza Aircross was definitely better for me than the Zhiyun cranes. It's just that self-leveling that it remembers multiple cameras. It has 3 settings that you can remember multiple cameras. You just have to press 2 buttons on the back of the gimbal, and it will auto-calibrate it. It rocks and it works out the weight of that camera, so there's no mucking around with that. Like I said, you have full control with this wireless remote that just connects through Bluetooth. It's just brilliant, guys. I mean, like I said, I'm buying it for my own money. I'm not getting them for nothing. I'm paying for these things, and I adore it. I'll get that gimbal again tomorrow if that failed. Where are we? We've been going 1 hour, 26 minutes. Do you believe it? What else? Let me finish and then we better go because you guys probably have had enough as well. So I use the Moza Aircross and it's balanced every lens I've put on it. I know it's fantastic. I think it's brilliant. Do you guys want to see a great video shot for a wedding a7iii? Gear and glasses, is it? Yeah, I've watched Gear and glasses before. What else have we got? David, what color profile do you use for your a7 III for photos and video? Standard profile? Just everything standard, mate. It's brilliant. Besides the 35 1.4, what other video lens should I get next? Well, it depends. I mean, I also love the 18 to 105. Now, that's Super 35, but I love that lens for video as well because it does have that zoom feature, and it really is an underrated lens, and I use that all the time. But I'm using all of my lenses on there now, like, you know, the 35 f2.8, I use the 35 1.4, I'll use anything that I get there. It really depends on what you want to use. The 16 to 35 I use a lot, and I use this an awful lot as well, that 10 to 18 on video as well. I'm using lots of these different lenses. Where else are we? 28 and 55 makes a good video. Yeah, it would. 28's a great lens. The Sirio is the best monopod made in terms of build features. I know, it's outstanding. I love it. You're right, that's Sirio, or Sirio, or however you pronounce it, Sirii. is fantastic. Again, not sponsored by them, purchased that myself. Sorry if I'm asking redundant questions, but have you had any banding issues? No, none. Benny said, new drone coming out by phase 1 with 100 megapixel sensor. Whoa. You think they are putting their sensor into test that can use that in other products? Then maybe, you never know. What are your thoughts on the follow focus on the gimbal? I've never used the follow focus on that. Oh, do you mean if I'm using it follow focus on? I don't understand. Do you mean the camera, JP, or do you mean using the gimbal itself? Ray said, did anyone try to order from Walmart? I can't answer that. Great presentation. Thanks, mate. Rick. David also, have you tried the Loxia series? No, I've heard they are incredible though. Inquisitive M said the Moza Air is the best gimbal right now. They are. They're amazing and good value too. All right, guys. Well, we might call it a day because that's now been 1 hour, 29 minutes, and I'm going to get in trouble again from YouTube comments saying that I take way too long. Please give me a thumbs up if you can. Stay tuned for more videos that I'll post. You know, obviously, Kiara's videos coming up soon. You'll see the studio one and also still some of that old building as well. I've still got some to post through there as well. And there's also the smoke shoot that I'm doing on the weekend as well that I'll post. I may just pop on tomorrow just for a quick video or something. So apart from that, guys, thanks all for the support. Getting very close to the 10,000 subscribers now. I think I've only got another 300 to go, so it's probably less than 2 weeks away. So really excited about that, and I can't thank you guys enough for supporting me. I really mean that. I'm here as much for you as you are for me, and that's why, like I said, I always try and answer the questions that pop up because I really do mean that. It's a community for me, and I really appreciate you following me, so I can't thank you enough for getting me up near that 10,000 area. Last couple of questions. If I should buy one prime, should I go for the 55 or the 85? I'll get the 85 if you are buying one prime, but that's me. That's about it. All right, guys. Catch you later, everyone. I'm going for a coffee. It's time in my New York accent. Coffee time. And I'll see you all again soon for the next video. Thanks for a great discussion, guys. And leave any questions down below if you have any other questions. Bye for now.